What's this doing now? My apologies. Bear with us 2 seconds because I think that by accident we are actually live streaming to my Facebook channel and my YouTube channel.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Well, isn't this a nice surprise? So Tamsin, I've been. Are you cool to just do it like this?
Look, let's have a crack.
Balls to it. Why
Let's
not?
have a
All
crack.
the best things are by accident. So gang, hello. I wasn't expecting to do a live show with the amazing Tamsin Simmons, um, but whilst faffing around for an event I've got coming up online on the 11th, I must have changed something in the settings. That's okay though. So you guys are getting a real sneak preview to podcast episode 102. 102, 103, one of them. This is like it's like Back to the Future. We're like bloody Doc. We're like Doc and Marty. You know what I mean? We're going Back to the Future here. How good's this? Anyway, let's rock and roll. So, hello everybody, and a warm welcome to the Success Curious podcast. It's your man Andy here, and I am absolutely delighted, honoured, somewhat dumbfounded by how I've managed to do it, but I've got Tamsin Simmons on with me, who is absolutely tremendous, and this is such a cool live episode to try this with. So Tamsin Simmons, she is an absolutely phenomenal leadership expert. She's come from something of a medical technical background and brings that experimental mindset into how we can grow and develop as people, as professionals, as leaders as well. She classes herself and is absolutely renowned as a leadership expert. She is an author who has just launched the wonderful Experiment Mindset, which is unlocking the science of personal growth. And having spoken to Tamsin for a little while before we did this podcast, I will hand on heart say that I've been really quietly excited about this. I actually have been. Tamsin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for rolling with the punches and doing this thing live anyway. But how the devil are you?
Well, I'm great, and I think it's fitting because I'm all about avoiding perfectionism, and what a way to avoid perfectionism than to accidentally go live and there's no room for us to go, you know what, let's say that again. So we're just getting it out there and experimenting our way through. So
I love
thank
it,
you
man.
for
It's like I meant to do it on purpose.
yeah.
So please, gang, if you are listening to the podcast, post live, then hopefully Adrian will try and make it seem like I did this on purpose. So anyway, let's just roll with it. Tamsin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much for coming on. I am absolutely keen as mustard to have a real good dig into not just your background, but how you've brought the elements of your background into what you're doing now, and how it's creating such an incredible impact. Because your book, the experimental mindset. I mean, it's already having impact all over the world, right? You mentioned before that you've had someone in Ireland bloody hit you up and say, how much it's impacted them, and in a fascinating way, impacting people in a way that not even you realized in some way, shape, or form, which is phenomenal, right? It's always cool when you get to figure out how different perspectives interpret things in different ways. But before we crack on, though, and get stuck into the meat and veg, Tamsin, give us a bit of an MO as to who you are and what got you to this point.
Yeah, so thank you. My name is Tamsin Simmons. I'm a leadership coach and speaker. I help individuals and leaders and organizations get the best out of themselves and their teams and their businesses. I've recently written The Experiment Mindset and become an author. But my road here was windy. I started my career in medical imaging uh, almost 20 years ago now. I did a decade in medical imaging and healthcare leadership. I found leadership incredibly hard. So I got here through necessity. I had to learn the hard way how to thrive in an environment where I was rarely or barely just surviving. And I found my way through. I found that the traditional approaches to leadership development weren't helping me. So I created my own. This is 10 years ago now when I launched my first leadership development program. And it went really well. And when people experienced the development program, they were CEOs, founders, senior leaders who would say, hey, you've got to come and do this with my team. And I accidentally created myself a new career in leadership development and organizational development consulting. I found myself here creating a book, again out of necessity, because I was coming across incredibly smart leaders and founders who, if I said to them, oh, you should read this book, or have you heard of this framework, they'd say, oh yeah, I have. They know more about leadership than I do. You know, they might have gone over to Harvard and studied a leadership development over there, come back, and they're still not doing it. You know, they know all of the things, they're really super intelligent, but they're still coming to me for a coach, right? It's the implementation that's the problem, not the information. And I had to go about learning what's going on here and how do we work around it. And that's really how the experiment mindset was born.
I've been talking about value recently, right? And I've been saying that value is defined not by the volume of information, but how it's understood, right? Or whether it's understood, right? And that's how in service-based industries, that the value that we have to bring is not in the information which is regurgitated through take your pick out of 5 million platforms now, but it's in our ability to take that information and translate it into a level of understanding that our customers can actually consume, right? It's helping them to actually take it in as opposed to getting paralyzed by the analysis of a ridiculous amount of information. And what you just said there about lots of people knowing the stuff, but not being able to take that stuff and turn it into action is so symptomatic of the vast majority of individuals in most, whether it's leadership or any sort of path of ambition in any way, shape, or form, right? And it's one of the key elements that when you see so many people, and we're all guilty of it ourselves in various aspects, I'm sure, still to this day, when we know the path, we even know how long the path is, and it's all lit up and looking lovely. But taking that first step's just a big pain in the arse, right? And you know, and knowing the way and doing the way is very, very difficult. I'm really interested. We're going to dig into that in a big way because I'm sure that that's going to provide some unlocks. And gang, if you haven't listened to that and don't think that the experiment mindset is worth buying, then I'd question whether you actually want to walk on that path at all, or whether what is the other end of that path is even worth having. In a big, big way. But before we crack on, though, I have to ask you the question that we ask all of our 102, 103 guests, and as being asked in the future as we speak. So, Tamzin, I have this belief around success, right? And it's split into a few different parts: success, connection, influence, and happiness. And no one can coexist without the other. I'm intrigued by this one. Tamzin Simmons, what is your definition of a successful human?
This has changed a lot for me over time, and I fully am comfortable with where I sit with this now, and I feel like I'm only just beginning to live it for the first time. And I believe it's congruence. So it's when what we know, what we think, what we say, and what we do all line up. I believe that's success.
I love it. It's very congruent with my train of thoughts. I say it in a much less eloquent way than you, I have to say. But when everything's aligned, it doesn't. It's that effortless flow, right? That's when people are. It's my version of that is a human in flow, when everything just rocks and rolls.
That's what
Everything.
it feels like. Yeah, it's kind of the output of it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I love that. So tell me, though, you just mentioned that you've only really come to hit your straps with this notion of congruence within yourself. What was it that you think were the sort of, was there anything that was sort of a bit like an anchor, sort of holding you back? Was it a belief thing? Like, what was it? Or when was the penny drop moment, shall we ask?
I don't think there was a penny drop moment. And I mean, if you read the book, you'll see that I think we have to evolve to where we get to, right? Like I think you need to walk the path, and I used to, you know, we all say it, but you've got to capture the learnings on the way. So I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was what I was taught growing up, which is, you know, you set your goal, you target your next job, your next income, the house, the car, and then you just strive on your way to get there. And then you arrive, you look around and you think, oh, is this it? And then you strive on to your next thing. So I think I needed to do that a few times before realizing that, hey, the happiness, the success doesn't come from achieving that goal that you set for yourself. I've achieved a lot of those goals. I had the fancy car, I don't anymore. I've got a beautiful property here, and yes, it creates a nice lifestyle, but did it make me feel, you know, congruent, happy, fulfilled? No. And now I've kind of let go of the chasing the next goal, and I'm doing work that I love. Like, I love to create things. I've just written a book. I'm about to launch a company. And it's the process of the creation that I love so much. So I'm not in a hurry to get out of it. I'm not in a hurry to tick the next box, to make my next income goal. I'm where I want to be, and I just don't think I've been there before. I used to think I wanted to be the boss when I grew up, when I was a little kid. And I think now I understand it wasn't that I wanted to be the boss. I really think I wanted to create something. And I've just worked that out after 40 years.
We're already going off piece, by the way, so heads up, because we're about to take a sharp left-hand turn here. Your face lights up whenever you use the word creative or creation or creating, right? Which is, at the surface, somewhat contradictory towards the experimental language that you use in either the book or your previous life, in the medical field and whatnot, right? And for a lot of people, it tends to be very much a case of data versus imagination. But what you're alluding to here seems to be a little bit of a blend. So tell me, like, this is interesting because you're, like I said, your language is very scientific in the way that you present stuff, right? Tell me, like, your background. Do you classify yourself as a relatively logical individual that understands processes and, you know, likes the minutiae of detail and whatnot? Is that you, or is that something that you've learned to live with, in spite of maybe not being overly enamored by it?
When I was young at school, I wouldn't have identified as creative whatsoever, but I
Mm,
was science minded. Like, I won a science award at school. So I did
right.
have that logical science brain. And then obviously I have a medical imaging degree. I did X-ray and ultrasound as a career, but have realized over time that I tend toward being a creator. And I think those things come together really beautifully, because given that I have a tendency to want to be, you know, an achievement orientation, if I wanted to create with that achievement orientation, then I'd want to do it right. And there's a
Mm,
chance that I wouldn't have a book or a business about to launch if I was taking that approach to wanting to create. I would have the idea and the spark, but I would be too scared to get it wrong. I would be too scared to look silly. But if I treat it as an experiment of okay, I think that if I do this thing, that this is going to be the outcome. Let's see. Let's get curious. And that's what a scientist does really well, right? Like, we don't hold on too tightly to the outcome because we're curious about it. I wonder what's going to happen here. And that's, for me, what allows me to actually bring these creative ideas to life rather than sitting on them, which, you know, if I had a different orientation, I might not take that first step.
this is such an interesting chat already. This is going to be so cool. So yeah, you're absolutely right, because and I, ironically, in a weirdly parallel conversation, my daughter that we were driving back from school, I think she was 9.5 or nearly just gone 10 maybe. And she goes, Dad, what's right? Is it science or is it God? Because she goes to a Christian school, right? And but she, she understands how, she likes knowing how stuff works, right? And I said to her, I said, well, the thing is, darling, it doesn't matter which path you take, or if you want to take a bit of a blend, or whichever way you want to go. Ultimately, everything that progresses has to start with an element of faith, right? Whether it's faith in that you want to find out, right, whether something's right or wrong, therefore you make an experiment. I wonder what would happen if, right? But you need to have a degree of faith in, like, well, it's worth having a crack. Like, it's worth us finding out. We don't know. I mean, nothing might happen. We might stick these two elements together thinking we're going to create fireworks, and then it just goes and does nothing, right? But at least we'll learn something, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously faith on the other side, in the sort of more commonly recognized sense from a faith perspective, is, Adam and Eve and all the bits and bobs, right? So or whichever path you take on that regard. Now, what you're essentially saying is that which is such a good observation, that the common narrative that scientists are very, very logical is actually tremendously contradictory to the very thing that makes scientists, because they're forever exploring, forever being curious. They're ever wanting to have a look on the other side of the fence, right, to see what's there, because they don't like being confined to here, right? Because otherwise, what's the point in science? You're just doing stuff. Which is incredible. And hence why this experiments mindset just works perfectly in that regard. Because, and one thing that is really flicking my switches here is it's turning this into a practical exercise as opposed to a would love to have, which is tremendous. So let's have a bit of a dig into that, because that is something that I think will switch a lot of people's thought processes and feel processes around this. Now, one thing I want to ask though around all of this is that in order for us to develop personally, personal development, professional, whatever the case may be, generally speaking, one of the big things that holds a lot of people back is the prospect of change, right? It's that fear of something changing, or that fear of something not working, like what you mentioned before there. Dig into this for us, because how did you, for example, get over that concern of being wrong?
I think I don't think people are scared of change. I think people get excited about change. When you think about the prospect of, oh, here's where I want to go, or I want to, I don't know, get a promotion, start a new business. Like, the actual initial thought of change can be really exciting for people, and it is often energizing. It's once you start to take those steps that potentially are grating against your identity, or a threat to your identity, or might make you look silly in front of other people, or require a lot of energy because you're doing something you haven't done before. It's that process that starts to feel really tricky. So it's not necessarily the thought of change, it's the experience of having to upgrade your identity or do something that's not necessarily aligned with your old identity that can feel really scary. So the way that I get past that is to understand my identity is not fixed, but is evolving. So I don't really attach myself too much to who I am now, because I don't think it's stagnant at all. I don't think it's a static thing. I think that we are evolutionary creatures. We're designed to evolve. And if I'm doing that step by step, rather than having to go from who I am to who I think I need to be immediately, which would be too big of a jump and too hard and not something I could do, when I see it as a creation in motion, then I think it's a bit easier to get around. So in terms of the fear of being wrong, or the fear of doing something that doesn't work, I don't attach myself so much to that moment in time anymore, because I see it for what it is. It is just oh, that didn't work. What am I going to test next? So it's all just a part of this process in motion, that there's no end point, because it's not win or lose, it's not succeed or fail. It's that didn't work, what am I going to try next? I'm not saying by any stretch that there's not really hard moments in time along that path, but I've experienced it enough now. I've gone through that enough now to just understand that it's all part of it, and people will either like me or not, or my ideas will either work or they won't, but I get that I'll just do the next thing and it's going to be okay.
You know what though, right? I reckon that's where this is so interesting, because we're switching from logical to emotional mindsets here, right? Because I think one thing that your underpinning of science and whatnot is helping you with, potentially, that a lot of people haven't got or are struggling with, is that scientific notion of something's either going to work or it's not. There is no emotional attachment to it, in essence, right? Now, like you said, the consequence of something not working out could be fair, it could be fairly sizable, and so therefore the volume of risk, obviously, of something going wrong can go up or go down. However, your quite logical thought process behind whether something is going to work or not going to work, it's kind of like, so I've got a project that I'm working on that's going to come out later in the year, and I ran it past someone within the industry, and sort of got their 2 cents on it, and he said, Andy, it's either going to be a raging success or an absolute embarrassment, right? And he goes, are you willing to take that risk? And I went, so what if it is embarrassing? And it was actually the first moment, but I'd not really reflected on it until you just said that there, because I'm like, well, what if it is? Who's it going to be embarrassing for, really? But from your perspective, you would come across a hell of a lot of leaders that have got to a position and yet still have this fragility in ego, almost, whether they want to admit it or not, because of the consequences of how it reflects on themselves. The consequences of something being wrong aren't half as important as how it looks to them. So when you are working with some of these leaders, and you work with some top organizations all over the shop, how have you broached that subject? Because that can be a little bit of a minefield type walk, right? Where if you take one foot wrong, it could just and go up in smoke, right? How have you handled that with those conversations with people?
Well, generally, so with your project that you're working on, for example, you've obviously weighed it up, and it's either going to be a raging success or an embarrassing disaster, potentially. And a lot of these creative projects are, right? But is the risk worth the payoff? So I often find myself just saying, play it through, right? So you've gone, there's an exercise in the book actually where we just go through the worst case scenarios. We actually work out, if this happens, what does that look like? What does it feel like? How does that impact your life? And what are you going to do next? And people are often averse to having a really good look at that. Like, we just want to shy away from it because that's too uncomfortable, and then so we don't move. But once we play it through, a lot of the time, particularly with the sort of leaders and executives that I work with, I'm increasingly working with people who are wanting to step out of their corporate careers and into running their own thing. They're wanting more freedom, flexibility, and to take that leap like I did. And what happens when we play it through is they realize their worst case scenario is ending up right back where they are now. So once we play it through, we often find that it ain't so bad, right? And then it's, if it is bad, is the learning worth it? And that's how I make my decisions. I had a similar experience last night. We're here and I'm setting up for a new business that I'm launching called Jump Proof, and I was setting up the packing room. I took a photo and I sent the photo to my mum and my brother, and I said, we're either in a few years' time going to be saying, I'll remember that silly little Jump Proof thing that Tamsin did, or we'll be saying, hey, remember when Jump Proof fit in that little shed extension room? And we have no idea what the answer's going to be, right? But for
Mm.
me, if it doesn't work, the amount that I've learned through that experience of having, had to learn about e-commerce, had to learn about product development, having to stretch myself into a completely different area, it's worth it to me. If
I
I
love
looked
it.
back and I hadn't done it, that would be far more painful than having not run that experiment and gathered those learnings along the way.
Oh, there's a lie, but the joy in your face when if people are watching this, gang, then you'll know it. But if you're listening to this after the event on the podcast, the joy in Tamsin's face as she talks about this venture that is so off-piste for her, it's not even funny, but is so cool in the same time. It's just you're like a kid in a candy store, and I say that in the most brilliant way ever. All right, and imagine, team, if you could get yourself into a space where you operated and made decisions with that level of joy, right? With that, it just blows my mind, right? Like that moment alone for me, is it, my the rest of my day is going to be mega now, just off the back of that one little moment, right? Because the joy that's emanating from Tamsin's face and from her demeanor and her and energy, it's undeniable. And so, who cares if it doesn't go wrong? But the thing is, right? Because of that level of joy, the likelihood of it going wrong is probably a hell of a lot less, right? So, how do you relate this experimental stuff, right? How can we set a little barometer? Because you talk about three levers of change, which I really want to dig into in a sec, right? But um, how can we ascertain prior to taking on a change, right, or taking on an experiment? How can we ascertain that that joy part, right? From your perspective, was this, so let's take your new project as an example, right? So before we crack on, tell everybody what this new project is. And FYI, ladies, you might want to pin your ears back on this one, and we will be putting links into the show notes as well for your reference. But Tamsin, give us a bit of an idea what this new project is.
Yeah, thanks. It's called Jump Proof. It's an absorbent active wear and underwear brand for women who have bladder leaks when they exercise, which is 1 in 3 of us. Can you believe? And we just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So it looks great, feels good, and it has women's backs.
I love it, man. I love it, and the I tell you, the number of ladies that are actually quite forthcoming with that information is on the rise as well. Where they just go,
Yes.
screw it, man. Like, we're at trampoline park. Like, I got to be careful here. It's absolutely fair. I've got to go bathroom first. Fair enough. And blokes who have that problem have got no excuse. They just need to look after. They just need to perhaps have a think about things. But so why was it that you set off on this journey? Was it like just a genuine problem that you thought, nah, there's got to be a better solution here? What's the go?
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 years ago now that I registered the name Jump Proof and had the idea. And it was just through necessity of there's not really a good solution here. You kind of have to be pretty creative to come up with your own way of going about things. And we're not talking about it enough.
Mm.
So it was a necessity thing of just wanting to create something great and useful for women that looks good and feels good. Uh, and it was just over time that in the process of creating that, I've learned that it's one of the most enjoyable things that I've done, particularly going through having the idea first. And then I've brought other people into the process who I share the idea with them. And then it's like the excitement over it's contagious. And then they use their skills, like the brand that we've got looks amazing. I shared that with the team that did the brand, and then they use their skills to bring it to life a bit more, like that cascading effect of it's a really joyful experience. But in terms of that joy and that experience of joy, it's not unique to Jump Proof. I feel the same way about the book. I feel the same way about, you know, most creative projects that I embark on, because it's the process and the experience of it that I've learned to hold on to. And that's really what the book and the experiment mindset is about. So if you're moving from having to, so if I had said, for example, I could have gone about this a very different way. Okay, Jump Proof needs to generate X income per year by this year. Like, this is a pretty traditional way of going about business, right? I could have said by the end of 2026, I need to have made my money back. I need to have made whatever, so I needed to make 100 grand by the end of 2026 out of Jump Proof. And I'm going to do it by this, and this. Suddenly for me, that amount of control, that need for certainty would sap the joy out of it for me. It really would, because I'm too focused on the outcome. I'm too busy trying to control how I get there that I'm missing the learnings along the way. I'm missing that curiosity. That is the thing that brings me agency, that's the thing that brings me momentum, because I know whatever I come up against, I'm going to be able to adapt to it, to go, oh, that's interesting. That happened. What am I going to do next? So even if I went out to market and the product didn't hit in the way that I expected it to, it'd be that's interesting. What am I going to do next? And that allows me to stay energized and joyful and curious, rather than like, oh no, it hasn't worked. Oh, got to throw it all in. I've lost all that money. I've lost all of those years of work. Like, the thought of that, it just immediately drains my energy. And most people are going about business and life in that way.
Oh, I
They're
couldn't agree
attaching
more.
themselves to the goal. They're relentlessly trying to follow their strategy. Even if that strategy isn't working for them, they're going to double down on it because they're committed and they want to get it done, and they're so scared of failure that they've, got to just keep going and do it all right and tick all the boxes. And it really does, I think, take the joy and momentum out of projects.
Look, without trying to bring the incredibly joyous energy of this chat down. I mean, I've seen the very fatal consequences of going about a new venture or a new idea in that pursuit of certainty, right? I think what we've landed on here is that when people try something new with that pursuit of certainty, or with that need for certainty in mind, like you said, it becomes a tremendously toxic and will lead you to make decisions that are very much not congruent with who you are, what you're about, your morals, and all those sorts of things, right? And white knuckling anything is only ever going to give you a heart attack at some stage or another, right? So let's talk about that word certainty if we can, Tamsin, because I think you're just a wonderful person to talk about this with. You've seen in the world, right, where there is so much uncertainty going on right now, right? Lots of chaos. There's an orange-faced chap causing a bit of drama, right? There's all sorts of stuff going on. There's slightly, paler, but as equally as interesting individuals mucking around with budgets and all these sorts of things more locally, right? And it's creating so much uncertainty because of the lack of control, or the volume of things that are altering people's trajectories that are outside of their control.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result of that, what I'm seeing, if I'm at the coalface of an auction, or there's a lot of hesitation generated through that heightened need for certainty when we were living in a world of a greater uncertainty. Now, I'm hoping you've got a magic pill for this. But how can we process this uncertainty in a different way? Because at the minute, it just seems to be this big ball of negative energy that seems to be gathering momentum as it rolls down the hill. And I feel that the world's ready to feel good again, but this is where we've potentially got a bit of an issue. So tell me, how can we try and reverse engineer some of this uncertainty?
Well, I think if we're trying to grip hold of certainty or create certainty, then we're barking up the wrong tree, because we know that, and people talk about this to me all the time, but we have to set a clear strategy, that we really have to go for that outcome. Like, cool, but is gripping it that tightly actually making it more likely that it's going to happen that way? I mean, the answer is no, because we can't control where things are going. So we just need to move our attention to a different thing, right? We need to direct our attention in a different way. So for me, instead of, like, we can have in our head what we would like the outcome to be, right? I think that's as good as it gets at the moment, is how would I like this to go down, rather than this is how it needs to go down. And then what's the thing that I can do that makes it more likely that that is going to occur? You know, what's the one step that I can take right now that is going to make it more likely that, you know, I'm going to get this outcome and not this outcome? And then I test that for a little while. I get to the next barrier or get the learnings that I want. Okay, this happened. Now, what's the next step that I'm going to take that's going to make it more likely or less likely that this is going to be the outcome that I get? So it's kind of bringing it in to what can I do in this moment that's going to take me in the direction that I'm wanting to go, but then even to hold the outcome loosely on that. And I think this is where the experiment mindset went from being a great tool for personal growth to being a necessity. In that there's not really another way we can go now. We can set our 5-year strategic plan, no worries, but I can tell you that in 2 years' time, when I'm talking to you and saying, hey, what's your strategic plan? Where are you trying to take your team? That you'll say, oh yeah, a lot of this really isn't relevant anymore because things have changed so much. And that's just a product of the environment that we're in. So if we can bring ourselves back to what's in front of us, what can I test now? What can I try? Then we're going to feel more in control, with more sense of agency, which is, you know, good for our own well-being, rather than being externally just knocked around by the environment that we're in.
Well, I love that. I absolutely love that answer. And it really does allude to the switch that we as human beings have to make now, right? And I can take it back to something that I always quote. Sir Ken Robinson, do schools kill creativity? That his world famous TED talk, one of the OG TED talks of all time, where Jeff Bezos is sat in the crowd listening to this guy, right? No one really knows who he is at that point, and he talks about the fact that kids that were graduating at the time of that talk, kids that have just started school at the time of that talk, are going to graduate in 20 bloody, they're going to retire in 2060 something. Right? They're going to, and yet the educational system is trying to gear us up and future-proof us for a future that we, now more than ever, we know that the likelihood of whatever we think is going to happening, pretty slim, right? Relatively slim. I mean, look, I joked about the Back to the Future reference at the start of this show. Have a think about when Back to the Future 2 came out, gang, and it set the coordinates from 1985 to 2012, I think it was, and the vision of what humanity saw when he went into the future, it couldn't be more different from what it is now, right? So what Tamsin's saying, gang, is if we try and hold on too much to something that we don't even own, chances of us being let down are pretty high. Yeah. And that's fascinating, man. Now, I really want to talk to you about these 3 levers of change, because I think these are going to be really quite pivotal if people are going to come to terms, shall we say, with the way the world is, not the way that they want the world to be. Because I think that's probably causing a lot of the anxieties that we're white knuckling onto stuff that we hope is still going to be in existence, but in reality doesn't, no longer exists. What are these 3 levers of change? And what are the effects of each one?
I'm going to say one more thing before I jump into the 3 levers. And I think it's important because I don't want people to think that we're not allowed to look to a vision of the future, that we're not allowed to hope for something great. It's just that the boundaries that we put around it need to look a little bit different. So before I get into how we look at behavior, I want to talk about how we set our vision
Love it.
differently in
Yeah,
order
love
to
it.
be able to still move towards something. And I call it horizon setting, right? So it's not creating a set destination or a set goal. It's what am I going to steady my eyes on that are going to allow me to keep moving in a direction that I know I really, really actually want to go. And it's artfully vague, and I think that's the difference. Is it's not so specific that we need to control it and grip hold of it. It's broader than that. So horizon setting asks you to think about the type of place that you want to be in, right? So it's, the actual environment. Do I want to have windows? Do I want to spend a lot of time outside? Do I want to be surrounded by nature? Whatever it is for you. Do I want to be in the city? It's the type of people you want to be surrounded with. So what kind of people do I want to work with, spend my time in on the day to day? What kind of skills do I want to be using? So it's not a job title. It's what kind of skills would I like to be using? What's the difference that I want to be making? So that meaning piece of what impact do I want to have? And how do I want to feel on my average day of the week? As I go about my work, as I go about doing what I'm doing, what state do I want to be in? Because I think often we think about, if I'm looking at the next promotion that I want to get or the next opportunity that I want to get, I focus on that moment in time, that inflection point of, woohoo, I've done it. But I don't think of the day-to-day experience of getting there on all of the other 364 days of the year that I'm needing to do the work. So I still think it's important to align in a direction of something in terms of congruence. If I want to be congruent, I really need to know what that would feel like. I need to know what the practicalities of that would look like. So that's what I'm encouraging people to do in terms of setting their direction or their horizon. So I think that's important to mention first.
I love that. I love that. And there's there's a very physical representation of that when if you're in your PE class or whatever back in the day, and you're always taught by your PE teacher to look forward, not look down.
Yeah.
Right. Those tightrope walkers, they whenever you see them on TV and you see some celebrities try it and balls it up and all the rest of it, they're always taught to look forward to the horizon, not down at their feet, which is such a physical representation of exactly what you just said, which is amazing. I love that. I love that. I'm writing notes down on that one.
Yeah.
Well.
I think also it's a decision-making framework for me. So it's if I'm working with a client and they've set their horizon and we go through it really clearly, like I get them to walk through it and they read out to me what that experience is, and I dictate it for them and I read it back to them so that I can get them fully in that experience. And then when they come up against an opportunity, a job offer or a question or a fork in the road, the question is simply, is it taking you toward the horizon or away from it? And it becomes really simple in that way. It's just an anchor point for us in the future.
I love simple. Simple's awesome.
Yeah.
Simple. All right, dig into these three levers for us, please, Tamzin, and give us a bit of an idea as to how we can make this horizon come a little bit closer.
So when we're looking at the experiment mindset, it's not simply just testing something and see what works. It's not just throw an idea at the wall and see if it sticks. It starts with this process of reflection, so kind of a diagnostic of, okay, well, I'm here, not there. Why? What is actually going on here? Because often we are trying to fix or treat a symptom rather than actually getting the heart of what's stopping me from heading toward the horizon, what's keeping me where I am now rather than over there. And the three levers is really that diagnostic tool for me. It's something that I use with individuals and organizations, and it's what generates behavior. So the first one is your environment. So it's the people, places, and prompts that you're surrounded with. The second one is your physiology, so the capacity of your brain and body. Am I psychologically safe? Am I physically safe? And do I actually have the energy that I need to be able to stretch myself? Because if you're going to be doing something new, something that you haven't done before, it actually takes a level of energy from a really practical standpoint from your brain and your body to generate those behaviors that aren't automatic for you. So yes, your physical capacity, and then there's your psychology, so your thoughts, beliefs, your mindset and identity. Having a look at, who do I think I need to be in order to do this thing, and who do I think I am, what's the reality, and what do I need to do? Like, what upgrade is actually required to get me from where I am to where I want to be? Is that in beliefs? Is it in the way that I think? Is it in the type of things that I do? Those are the three levers that we look at. So it's your environment, your physiology, and your psychology. And I think we try and mindset our way to a lot of things in terms of change, but it's not always the answer, right? Like, if I'm wanting to build a business and I'm surrounded mostly by people who, you know, have jobs and they go to work and they do their thing every day and they've got this stability and this income there. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do, but if these are the people that I'm surrounded with, it's actually a lot harder for me to generate the behaviors associated with taking the risk and starting the business. But if I start spending a lot of time with people who have already done it, who have already launched businesses, and their kind of everyday behavior is my desired behavior, if I start spending time with those people, then it's a lot easier for me to generate the behaviors required in order to do the things that I'm wanting to do. And I don't need to mindset my way there at all. It's just most likely, social science says, and we've all had the experience, that if I'm surrounded by people where their everyday behavior is my desired behavior, I'm more likely to just generate it. So we can be smarter about the lever that we're pulling in order to head in the direction that we're wanting to go, to make it easier and to make sure that we're actually dealing with the thing that's causing this biggest challenge or barrier.
All this mindset stuff, right, that is earning some people tremendous amounts of money, right? I really like what you've highlighted there, because a lot of people are led to believe that, you know, I think I can, I know I can, I will, I can, or whatever it says. Your notion there, which is absolutely on the money, that sometimes just willing it to happen ain't going to make it happen. You know, there are some practicalities to life that cannot be avoided here. And again, it's both analytical, but it's being analytical in order to map out where progress lies, which then takes a level of creativity and you know, cracking open that fixed space into becoming something more and something new. And when people talk about mindset, and this is, as I'm saying it, I'm sort of realizing it, a lot of people sell mindset like it's a belief, when in essence, like, the thing that's holding you back might not actually be your mindset, because that's, you know, it's your mindset that got you into the mindset course in the first place. So your mindset's probably not that bad. There might just be some, it's kind of weird when you say it, but it's true. But it might actually just be some relatively hard work, but relatively straightforward practicalities that are missing from you know, the vehicle that you want to build in order to drive you to where you want to be, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've written a book on mindset. I get that mindset is important, but I believe that your mindset changes through evidence and experience. So I don't just believe it. Like, the science says that. We can't learn our way to a better mindset. We've got to experience the challenges. We've got to experience and come up against a struggle and do something hard, reflect on it, and then we change. You know, we upgrade and we evolve as we're moving. We don't upgrade and evolve first and then move. It just doesn't work that way. So we can do the little bits that we need to in order to generate the movement and the momentum, so you can take those first steps, but it's on the steps that you change. It's through doing the thing that you get the learnings, and that's the important thing. So what's going to be most likely to get you moving and to generate the behavior, and it's the behavior that kind of changes the mindset.
I love that. This is absolutely, and this is something that I know there are so many people that need to listen to this and read this book of yours, because mindset is being sold like it's an artistic function, right? When you're bringing a tremendous amount of logic to what is a very emotional process. And as a result of that, a lot of the emotion that can generally hold people back, which generally is the emotion that holds everyone back, is something that you are helping to extract away from that progress, thus allowing you to move forward and feel the type of joy that's written across your face all the time, which is
Yeah.
quite amazing.
Yeah, look,
Um,
I say that I haven't written a psychology book, I've written an action book. And I think it's a
yeah,
really important distinction. And it's not ignoring the fact that you feel emotions and that things get hard. It's allowing you to feel the emotions and understand that it's inevitable. It's a necessary part of progress, it's a necessary part of stretching yourself and evolving. And you just learn to embrace it, to welcome it, rather than to try and fight it off and avoid it. Because you end up just procrastinating or trying to, listen to all the podcasts and get all the books to try and do it right so that you can move forward, and then you don't do anything at all.
I bloody love that. And it ties in wonderfully well with something that me and Robin Banks said on one of the previous episodes that we just had, which that old adage of, that acronym of fear, that false evidence appearing real. What a crock of shit. Like, seriously, it's not false evidence. It's evidence that you need to reflect on and analyze and work out in your language, how to progress via understanding the outcomes of whatever it is that you had a crack with. It's not something that you should have as an avoidance mechanism. It's something that you should realize is it's a signal to say that you're about to learn something one way or another, right? Which ain't a bad thing. So I love your practicality towards this is quite tremendous, and the way that you articulate it, your words are still very science lab, very chemistry, physicsy, which is so cool and really does bark up my tree, which is amazing. Look, Tamzin, I could talk to you for hours. Look, I really could. Which would be unfortunate for you, but incredible for all our listeners. And I have got zero doubt, because I'm going to make it happen in some way, shape, or form, that we will get to play in the same sandbox again sometime very, very soon. But I am going to have to bid you adieu. So before I do, though, the last question we always ask all of our guests is, again, it's a reflection one. And so, Tamzin, as you head towards your next horizon, to put it into your parlance, what is the one thing that you are needing to bring to your toolkit, or that you need to work on, or that you have identified as something that is missing, that you are looking to sort out as you move forward yourself? What is one thing that you're working on right now?
I really need to delegate some stuff off of my plate.
You
I
reckon?
Yeah. I'm running three businesses. So I've got my consultancy, I've now got the book, I've got Jump Proof, and I'm managing director of a family business that's requiring a lot of my time at the moment. And all of these projects, unfortunately, are at a point where they require a lot of me, a lot of my time. And I'm fully aware that in those moments when I start giving some things off to other people who are specialists in those areas, that it feels really bloody good, and that it's what I need to start doing more of. So it's not an immediate thing, because it's just not at the moment so practical, but where I can in the next 12 months is going to be a big thing for me to keep myself just doing the stuff that keeps me able to, be in this space of joy and energy, and takes away some of this energy sapping stuff that doesn't necessarily need to be me, because life is wonderfully full right now, but I know that in order to be in congruence, I do need a bit more space.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Tamzin Simmons, the experiment mindset. You've got to go get it. Mine's on its way from Amazon as we speak. It's on all major bookstores and all that sort of stuff, right?
It is, yeah.
All the bits and bobs. Are we going to get an audio book at some stage?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Let's put that out there. I haven't done one yet.
All right. Well, we'll expect for it to get put onto an audiobook at some point, gang, because the way that this human's carrying on, it's only a matter of when, not if. Tamsin Simmons, thank you so much for joining me on the Success Curious podcast. I can't tell you how much fun this was. So good.
I really enjoyed it as well. Thanks so much.
And we did it live as well, which is even
Ooh,
better.
love
So
it.
we will by accident see how the hell this gets received, and maybe we should do some more lives, gang. Anyway, until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. On behalf of Tamsin and myself, look after yourselves and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll speak to you real soon.